Welcome to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Coming to you pre-recorded from our respective homes in North Texas, it's the Best Darn Diddly 126 Podcast Extravaganza. Let's meet our host. He's the man, the myth, the Captain Wacky. He's been renamed Miles.
Hello, I'm Mr. Most Days Off, but you can call me Miles. You might remember me from such podcasts as this one, or one of my many appearances on the Somebody's Podcast Network.
Remember, you're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Ding! We've got a special show for you today. It's another Simpsons clip show. That's way better than another Simpsons clip show. For our 126 podcast extravaganza, we're discussing The Simpsons, the 138th episode spectacular, originally aired on December 3rd, 1995. Well, folks, we have a weird one for you. Like I just said, we are talking about the 138th episode spectacular today. And first and foremost, confession time. I once again did not think this was the episode that we are discussing today.
Well, for some reason I thought this was going to have that New Orleans trip with Chief Wiggum in it for some reason.
Yep, me too.
But this is not that
This is not that episode. Not that episode at all. I don't know why, but I could have sworn the episode where you get the trivia with the two characters that died was that same episode. So I don't know what happened. Maybe
they were never popular characters, Miles.
Maybe it's a Mandela effect, Richie. Maybe it's a Mandela effect.
Those have been popping up a lot lately.
They're all over the place. It's that, and that's a synchronicity in itself. Once again, shout out to the Secret Transmission podcast, which actually we will talk a little bit about Toby today, because if you recall, he was a guest on another Simpsons clip show, which was the last review show that we discussed, I believe. And that one is actually connected to this one in a way that I did not realize.
I cannot believe that he was the last person we had on for a clip show. I thought we were doing one every year, and it just sounds really crazy because it seems it was so long ago. Man.
Well, that was just the very third or it was early on in season 6, I believe.
That was a long, long time ago, Mr. Most Days Off.
In a galaxy far away.
But hey, for a clip show, this was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was a significantly better clip show, and I mean, it's reflected in its rating on IMDb, it's reflected in my enjoyment of it. The fact that I'm not going to be talking crap about it the entire episode is probably a good sign. But we did actually get somewhat of a traditional opening credits, actually a far extended opening credits, but we got a chalkboard gag. It did state that I will only do this once a year, which for us is twice, but hey, who's counting? We moved through the episodes a little quicker. We did get some of Lisa's solo, but it was actually played over a sequence of couch gags that played on repeat with each other, which is just a fun way to do something that the fans absolutely love and fill some of your time for what's obviously going to be a shorter episode. Right. We got a huge chain of these. We got the Simpsons as giant brown slugs. We got the Simpsons running off the edge of the frame. We had everybody in Springfield running into the Simpsons living room to watch TV. We had Tiny Simpsons. We had Santa's Little Helper growling on the couch. We had the Monty Python foot that we've seen several times. We had reverse size Simpsons where Maggie's largest and Homer's the smallest. We had the Escher, impossible living room, essentially, where they're all coming in from different angles that just don't make sense. Yeah. We got the perspective hallway where the hallway just keeps going and possibly forever. My favorite is still Carpet is Water, where you see the Simpsons actually swim into their living room. This is a fantasy of mine when I was a kid. I used to dream of having the basement flooded and being able to have it as swimming around, go play video games and whatnot. Obviously that would have to stay on a shelf, but the rest of it could be flooded.
When you're a kid, you don't care about the scientific research involved for something like that to exist.
Not at all. We do get the black and white cartoon hands, kind of the old school 1950s Mickey Mouse style with the shaky big hands. And finally, we get the extended chorus line with the elephants and the circus and all of the bits, one of the longest ones in general. And that actually brings us to the end of our opening credits, which lasts a whopping 2 minutes and 17 seconds on this episode.
And we get a notification that lets us know there will actually be 23% new footage in this episode, Miles.
Yeah, that's great and probably accurate.
I didn't realize this, but, well, actually I did realize this. I'm lying. 23 is a really good number, Miles. I'm just going to throw that out there.
You know, that's actually relevant to one of the facts I have from IMDb, in that this is the only episode of The Simpsons to ever be entirely produced in America. Because there was so little new animation needed and they were recycling it all, they actually did all of the animation in-house themselves. They did not do it in Korea like they have a lot of their animation done for like a standard episode. So this one was entirely made in the United States. The only actor involved in this entire episode was Phil Hartman playing Troy McClure, because, of course, in this episode, unlike the other clip shows, instead of it being like memories of The Simpsons, this one is painted like a live sitcom, like flashback show, like something that you might have seen for, I don't know, like the 50-year reunion of the Golden Girls, or like when Roseanne reunited on a talk show before all the controversy, or, you know, whatever it might be. But this had Troy McClure kind of reflecting as like hosting society through a reflection on The Simpsons.
Well, and some of the new footage was stuff that was already animated, too. We just had never seen it before, so I bet that helped out a lot as well.
Very good point. There is a ton of animation that had already been produced because it was cut from other episodes. And a lot of those actually, those deleted scenes are actually on the DVD. So I've seen them recently, and we've even talked about a few of them. But ultimately, a lot of them were brand new, and at the time, the DVD sets were popular, so it wasn't, they're even available as far as I know. I'm not sure when they started, actually, but I know that not everything was available at this time when these DVD sets came out, obviously somewhere around 2005, because that's when the commentary was recorded.
Well, then we also get some of the live shots of Groening and Sam Simon, and was it Al Jean was the other one? No, James L. Brooks, excuse me. So we get live shots of them as well because they are animated in real life. So that probably costs nothing.
That's fun. So we start out this episode with right where you're talking about, actually, but Troy McClure is kind of discussing the history of The Simpsons. The Simpsons began as the brainchild of cartoonist Matt Groening. And we see a bald man with an eye patch saluting the United States flag. He looks very menacing and very militarian. And apparently, he is designed to look like Hollywood director John Ford.
Nothing like Matt.
Nothing like Matt at all. Which, this is actually noteworthy right here, too, because this is actually the first time Matt Groening's last name was said out loud on the show, and it was very commonly mispronounced Groening up until this time. In fact, in the Simpsons video game that came out in 2007... the voice actor who said Matt Groening actually pronounced it Matt Groening, and that is actually in the game.
Oh, that sucks. Which game was that?
The Simpsons game in 2007. It was like the live RPG one, is it Hit and Run?
Okay, I was going to say, was it the Grand Theft Auto one?
Or no, I think this was just literally called The Simpsons game, and then Hit and Run came out later than that, if I remember correct.
There was a game that was just The Simpsons game. I remember. Yeah, that one. Because, like, at one point, I think you're in the land of chocolate as Homer trying to, like, go up this mountain of chocolate or something. I played, like, the first level of it.
Oh my god, The Simpsons Hit and Run is a game that I so badly want to be re-released in, like a digital form, or put it on PS4. Better yet, put it on Switch. That would be amazing. That might have just inspired me to make a Behind the Diddly here soon for some other top video games that I'd love to see released on Switch.
Uh-oh, you see his brain a-churning. But yeah, that would be really awesome if they remade that. We could have, especially if it was like online co-op.
Oh my god, yeah, that'd be super fun. Super fun.
All right, we're talking about this episode, though.
So in addition to seeing this picture of Matt Groening, who is not Matt Groening, we also see a picture of James L. Brooks, which looks very much like kind of a chubby version of the Monopoly Man, complete with bags of money. And then, this is fun, we see Sam Simon, and he's drawn to look like Howard Hughes-esque, where he's gone kind of crazy and shut-in. Long hair, long fingernails. And this was actually drawn by Sam Simon himself, who had famously had pretty rough departure with the other creators of The Simpsons. They had a falling out at this point. There's a lot of animosity, as we learned in Springfield Confidential by Mike Reiss. Originally, they actually had a footage not found cell in place for this joke, but Sam Simon did not like it, so he actually drew that animation himself, sent it to The Simpsons. It wasn't black and white, so The Simpsons had it colored in, and that's what they ended up using for this show.
That's pretty funny, actually. Way to make a crack at yourself there.
Yeah. This is an episode that is very much filled with self-deprecating humor.
Yes.
And that might be one of the reasons that it's just a better episode. I mean, even on the commentary, which the commentary on this episode featured Josh Weinstein, Bill Oakley, Matt Groening, John Vitti, and George Meyer, who was just declared to be there because he's a team player, which I thought was funny. And they collectively agreed that while none of them are really fans of clip shows, and there's a lot of animosity towards them from the staff, but this is one of the better ones. And a lot of that did have to do with the framing they took and the fact that they got to work so much with Phil Hartman, so it just made it a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's just enough in there to bring them some joy out of it.
I think so, yeah. After meeting the creators of the show, Troy goes on to tell us about the humble origins as short cartoons on the Tracy Ullman Show, the nation's showcase for psychiatrist jokes and musical comedy numbers. On April 19th, 1987, America first met The Simpsons. We actually cut to the very first Simpsons short ever created and ever to air on the Tracy Ullman Show, which is actually really cool, because this is the first time that you actually get to see these in their entirety, other than if you watched that show. This first one is called Good Night. And it's probably one that a lot of you are familiar with because of the fact of its historic nature, but we see the Simpsons in their very, very rough state, and when we cut back to Troy McClure, he's got this look of disbelief on his face, like almost disgust.
How bad skinnier and smaller than Bart does laying in bed, and it's really weird. And like when the lights go out and you see Bart's eyes, one of them turns like red for a split second. It was really like... It takes a second for your brain to adjust to it.
We're going to talk about it more later, but it was definitely a completely different era. Because again, these were just short cartoons that were featured in another show. So they didn't have a production studio. This was people just drawing these cartoons out. And they just didn't have the time or budget to do a lot. That's why you'll even notice, if you look in the corners, Matt Groening was a little bit disappointed because he said that he kind of wished that when they made this episode, they would have finished up the drawings a bit for him, because there's parts where, like, the bed is just not completely there. Like, some of the legs are missing, and it's just kind of floating. There's parts where the walls aren't finished, and things of that nature, where it's just...
that drawing of Grandpa is terrible.
Again, we'll talk more about that when we get it, but... again, I think the funniest part here is just the fact that Troy McClure is seemingly, like, just disgusted and shocked by the fact that...
What the hell?
What? This cartoon made it?
That's also what brings a lot of the charm and humor to the episode, is that, like, you're watching it with Troy McClure, basically.
Right. And he, like, suddenly realizes he's on camera, so he kind of does a fake laugh and is like, ha
ha ha! They haven't changed a bit, have they? Way to sell it, Troy.
Troy goes on to save the day by saying, as the weeks went on, so did the cartoons. And we start to see a sequence of just more of these shorts. We have The Perfect Crime, which is where Bart stole the cookies from the cookie jar, but ate them all and ends up feeling sick. A lot of these are more Bart-focused, and that's because, again, originally Bart was actually supposed to be the main character of the show, and it kind of shifted to Homer over the first few seasons. We see Bart at bath time, which is really funny.
I like that one.
I do like that they introduce Homer as the kids of the Nemesis or the foil to Captain Wacky, later renamed Homer.
I think that was a good change. But yeah, I very much enjoyed the bath time one. I've just had a lot of charm to it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it showed the brattiness of Bart, and also, like, I don't know if you, like, anybody who has kids or, like, has nieces or nephews or whatever, but, like, kids at bath time are kind of hilarious, and it's kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. Like, they have, like, you know, they'll run around, like, wet, and, like, it's hard to keep them, like, the idea is to actually get clean. Like, they just see it as, like, playtime, and it can be very comical. So, like, this kind of fun twist with Bart playing in the bathtub ends up flooding the entire bathroom to the point where it, like, literally monsoons Homer to the ground. And then, like, as Bart comes surfing by, he shakes his ass at Homer and tells him it's squeaky clean.
I would like to apologize to all the parents listening right now that Miles said that it's comical and not super serious and frustrating to get your kids to take a bath. He's a child at heart, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm sorry, but that shit's funny to watch. It is what it is.
Send any of your kids to Miles at P.O. Box.
Kids love me, man. I'm like a walking cartoon character, so it's fine. We continue our framework here with more Troy McClure.
Maybe the drawings were a little crude, but all the characters were there. Itchy and Scratchy.
And we literally get these drawings that look like they could have been drawn by the aforementioned toddlers we were just discussing.
Grandpa Simpson.
This time in crayon, it looks like one of the toddlers drew this one as well.
And Krusty the Clown.
Possibly the worst one yet. And I have to say, this was obviously The Simpsons poking fun at the crude nature of the original drawings. But
yes,
during this episode, the director, David Silverman, who had been around since the Tracy Ullman Show, actually got a little bit, not necessarily offended, but he got a little bit defensive about this because he really was saying how, like, you guys don't understand how different it was. The deadlines we were under to try to get these drawings in was insane, and there just wasn't time to make them better some of the time. So that's why they were as crude as they were.
It's one of those things where somebody's getting, like, really upset about something, but it just makes it funnier to everybody else the more upset they get, I guess.
I think that's probably exactly what happened.
When we return, more classic moments, and for the first time ever on TV, our private reel of Simpsons outtakes, including the alternate endings to Who Shot Mr. Burns.
And we actually see the applause lights come up so that the crowd knows to applause for Troy in this moment. And we see Troy McClure walk just off stage enough to be out of view. And also, it's noteworthy here that you can actually see on these shots that the Simpsons home is a set. Like, behind the walls, there isn't actually a home. It's like boards holding up fake walls and such. And essentially, Troy McClure pulls a Krusty the Clown, walks right off of screen, and immediately lights up a soothing Laramie cigarette. As Troy McClure lights his cigarette, the screen actually fades to a trivia question before break.
In the opening credits, what does the cash register say when Maggie is scanned?
Do you know the answer? Find out when we return after this message from some buddies of ours.
Hey everybody, we are the Derailers, Goobs, Ripken, and Jenny Bean, and you can join us once every week for a brand new derailment. It includes sidetracking, randomness, we just can't stay on topic.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Derailers.
And please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and also on YouTube.
Derailers!
In the opening credits, what does the cash register say when Maggie is scanned? The cash register says, NRA forever. Just one of the hundreds of radical right-wing messages inserted into every show by creator Matt Groening.
This was a joke that just confused the crap out of me as a child. Like, I remember not understanding what any of this meant at all, even a little bit. I had to ask my dad what the NRA was, and he's like National Rifle Association, which that didn't actually help me understand anything better. But in today, as we watch, hilarious, because as we know, The Simpsons definitely is a fairly moderate, actually, show, but overall, I think you'd have to argue that it leans left more than right.
Absolutely. Yeah, the NRA stuff I could understand, but like the radical right-wing part, which is what really brings home the joke, I did not get at all as a child.
Well, I think they go hand in hand.
They do, but I'm just saying from the outside perspective of a child, you can describe to me what the NRA is, and I can understand it.
You could get that, yeah.
But the reason for the joke and the right-wing part is takes a little bit more life experience, I guess you could say.
There you go. You know, Rich, over the 6 years The Simpsons has been on the air, they've received dozens of letters from fans wanting to know more about the show. Tonight, we'll answer some of your questions. Professor Lawrence Pierce of the University of Chicago writes, I think Homer gets stupider every year. That's not a question, Professor, but we'll let the viewers judge for themselves. So this bit right here is actually based on real life complaints starting all the way back in season 2. They started receiving these complaints that they were annoyed by how dumb Homer was becoming. And then, of course, we also know that the fans will start to complain at some point about jerk-ass Homer when Homer becomes quote-unquote too mean. I think that what we can learn from observing this is that people like to complain.
Yeah, this is pre-Twitter and social media time, too. So, I mean, if Twitter were around at this point in the existence of The Simpsons, you know it would have been, like, significantly more of these complaints.
Oh, yeah, it would have been... it probably happens all the time online. I can't imagine how many people they have to block, but... Back in those days, you had to write a letter and then wait for the snail mail to take it. Or I guess you could probably email. I don't really know.
Yeah, you probably could have emailed, but you had to connect to the internet with the dial-up modem at this point.
AOL.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No. Let's move on.
Yeah, I heard that once or twice in my life. Finally, it connects.
Failure.
Actually, it's still trying to connect to this day.
Let's start it back up from the beginning.
Oh no. So we start to see a montage of scenes with Homer being a dumbass. Things such as, hello, my name is Mr. Burns. I believe you have a letter for me?
Okay, Mr. Burns, what's your first name?
I don't know.
I still, that's one of my favorite moments. I do that all the time, especially since we reviewed the episode. It just brings me so much joy, Miles.
That's all the way back. I believe that was season 3's Blood Feud. Or is it season 2's Blood
Feud?
Season
2, yeah.
That is season 2's Blood Feud. Oh, wow. Man, we've been reviewing a lot of episodes.
I can actually say it. You wrinkled my brain.
We also see, well, Homer, you can take some consolation in the fact that something you created is making so many people happy.
Oh, look at me. I'm making people happy. I'm the magical man from Happy Land in a gumdrop house on Lollipop Lane.
Slam!
Oh, by the way, I was being sarcastic.
Slam! Well, duh. Another great Homer moment. I don't think that's a sign of him being stupid. The intelligence it took to come up with that joke, that was some high-level sarcasm right there.
He understood sarcasm because he said he was being sarcastic, so that's not something a dumb person would do, Miles.
True. Also, we get to flashback on one of my favorite parody sequences as far as the openings of the show go. This is where we see the Simpsons take on the Flintstones, and Homer's at work and gets off whenever the whistle blows. Yabba dabba doo! Simpson, Homer Simpson, he's the greatest guy in history. From the town of Springfield, he's about to hit a chestnut tree. Ah! Again, I sing that all the time when I'm driving.
That was my ringtone up until I had to get a new phone like a month and a half ago. Like, I've had that on my phone forever. And for those interested in knowing what my new ringtone is, it's Jasper singing Lollipop. It's quite
Lollipop,
awesome.
lollipop, ooh, lolly, lollipop, lollipop.
Lollipop. And then all his teeth come out. It's fantastic.
It's noteworthy to point out that Yabba Dabba Doo Flintstones theme was actually from the opening Marge vs. the Monorail. And shout out to Jessica Maynor from the Body Count podcast, who actually recently was trying to figure out which episode Lisa is in virtual reality interacting with Genghis Khan, and it's actually from the beginning of Marge vs. the Monorail.
You get to kill so many people when you're in VR with Genghis Khan.
It honestly seems like that would be very low tier of people Lisa would want to meet, but we already talked about that episode. Moving on, this is a whole new episode about old episodes.
I'm so episodic about that, it doesn't make any. Let's just go on.
We cut to another very popular and famous scene, this time from Deep Space Homer, where Homer opens a bag of chips while in zero gravity.
Homer, no! They'll clog the instruments.
Careful, they're ruffled!
I'll take care of this.
Dun 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 dun
Houm.
dun 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 dun.
Ooh.
And then, of course, Homer approaches the ant colony. The ants try to protect the queen. Who's the queen? I'm the queen. No, you're not. But it doesn't matter. They all go floating into gravityless space until, of course, the carbon rod comes in to save the day.
Freedom. Horrible, horrible freedom.
And finally, we cut to the last Treehouse of Horror episode, not the one we just reviewed a week ago, but Treehouse of Horror 5 from Season 6. This is the shitting where no TV and no beer make Homer go something something.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Whap! Which, again, you can't say that makes Homer look like he's being stupider because, first of all, it's a Treehouse of Horror, so you throw that out the window on continuity. And, I mean, he was just crazy, not stupid.
I don't really think they were trying to answer the professor's statement.
Yeah, that as well.
In fact, we're moving on to a new letter. This time, Dr. Linus Irving of the Sloan Kettering Memorial Institute writes, "How does Matt Groening find the time to write and draw an entire Simpsons episode every week? For the answer to this, we went straight to the source." And we see a camera pull up on Matt Groening, who as soon as he sees the camera starts to lose it.
Get off of my...
Bang! 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 And he starts shooting at the camera. Of course, what Matt meant to say, according to his attorneys, is that he couldn't possibly do it alone, and he insisted that we take the time to acknowledge the hard work of everyone who makes The Simpsons possible. And we get one of those classic... They use this joke a lot, to be honest, but they basically have a impossibly long string of names cut across the scene, or across the screen, in a matter of seconds.
For me, that joke never gets old. I love when they go to that well.
Absolutely. It always works. Finally, Ambassador Henry Membatumba of the Ivory Coast writes, "What is the real deal with Mr. Burns' assistant, Smithers? You know what I'm talking about." Of course we do. And we cut to a lot of scenes where we see the very unique and, I would say, intimate to some extent. They're close. The relationship between Mr. Burns and Mr. Smithers.
Yes, and the first one from one of my favorite episodes of that season, Rosebud, where we have the Burns popping out of that birthday cake.
That episode's chock full of heady goodness.
Yes, it is, Miles. Yes, it is. But I won't get what I really want.
No one does. It's of course I send this to a lot of people on their birthdays, so you've probably seen it if you've ever had a birthday on Twitter. And that is Mr. Burns popping out of a cake just for Smithers, wearing a sash.
Happy birthday day, Mr. Smithers.
We also see a cut to Dog of Death, where Smithers is telling his boss that people like dogs, sir.
Nonsense. Dogs are idiots. Think about it, Smithers. If I came into your house and started sniffing at your crotch and slobbering all over your face, what would you say?
If you did it, sir? Also, we cut to Malibu, or Lisa versus Malibu Stacy, I should say, where Smithers is opening up his computer and a digital image of Burns appears.
Hello, Smithers. You're quite good at turning me on.
You should probably just ignore that. And finally, and Marge gets a job, where we see another very famous sequence. This is the one where it's a dream Smithers is having, and Burns actually floats in through his window. Something to note on this one is they had a lot of controversy with some of the editing for content in this, with some bumps that appeared in the sheets with Mr. Smithers. Now, the animators still to this day, or at least as of the time of the recording, I should say, they stand by the fact that it was a knee, but the censors didn't see it that way.
Oh, no.
I think a lot of it, I honestly don't know if it really was a knee or what the situation was. I know it had to be changed, but I do kind of believe the idea that they had drawn a knee, but because of the nature of this sequence at the time in general, they were probably like very laser focused trying to find something wrong with it, and like they just jumped to conclusions is I think a possibility. Or they gave Waylon a boner and were hoping to get it passed through.
So is he, but
nice.
But now I'll never be able to see that segment again and not have to try to look at that. It's not going to be able to escape my brain. Way to ruin a segment, Miles.
Sorry, man. I couldn't help myself. I will add a little bit of light to this whole letter segment in general. You may have noticed that they held really long on each letter that was written in just a freeze frame. And that was actually a technique that they were using, David Silverman was using to milk the new footage time. Because on these clip shows and the contracts that they have with the network, again, these were kind of forced upon them. They weren't really something that they wanted to do. It was something that they had to do for money, essentially. And during the creation process of these episodes, they are only allotted 3 minutes of new animation, which is not a lot. So by freeze framing on these letters, they were able to kind of milk that a little bit.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And that is actually going to bring us to the end of the second act already. I kind of expected this one might go by quick, being a clip show. It is what it is. We still have some interesting stuff to talk about in the third act, but as we go to break, we are left with a trivia question.
Which popular Simpsons characters have died in the past year?
Again, do you think you know the answer? Find out when we get back for our third act of the 126 Best Darn Podcast Extravaganza's coverage of the 138th episode spectacular. Now let's go have us a sweet, sweet Laramie. Greetings, friend. Do you wish to look as happy as me? Well, you've got the power inside you right now, so use it and send $1 to Best Darn Diddly. You can find us on patreon.com or donate to us directly on PayPal at bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. Don't delay. Eternal happiness is just $1 away.
$1 for eternal happiness and to support one of my favorite podcasts. I'd be happier with $1. Which popular Simpsons characters have died in the past year? If you said Bleeding Gums Murphy and Dr. Marvin Monroe, you are wrong. They were never popular.
And I will say, in the commentary, they did confirm our theory from a few episodes back. In Who Shot Mr. Burns 2, they essentially kill Dr. Monroe in mention only as they list his memorial hospital.
Aww.
That's like basically the only thing you ever get that signifies that he's dead.
I always felt cheated because I knew that I got the two characters right when the first time I saw this episode when I went to commercial break. and then when it came back and it's like, you're right, but you're completely wrong. Like, oh, that frustrated me so much.
Yeah, it's a troll move before trolling was really a thing.
Yeah.
Simpsons did it.
It's like, okay, you got me, but technically I was right, even though I was completely wrong.
We get back into our fake special here with more brilliant Troy McClure. I mean, this is Phil Hartman at his best. Right about now, you're probably saying, Troy, I've seen every Simpsons episode. You can't show me anything new. Well, you've got some attitude, mister. Besides, you're wrong, because sometimes episodes run long, and certain scenes never get aired. So fire up your VCR, because here, for the first time ever, are the cut-out classics. And this is where we jump to a sequence of deleted scenes. And again, a lot of these, as I mentioned, are actually on the DVD in the deleted sequences. So I've seen some of these recently. We may have talked about some of these. I do not remember which ones we've talked about on the air and which ones we haven't. Sometimes we skip them because the episodes run plenty long on their own. So we'll talk about them now. Yay. When Krusty the Clown got canceled, he tried everything to stay on the air. Here's what you didn't see.
Watch my show. I will send you this book featuring me in a variety of sexually explicit positions.
And he holds up a book that literally is called Sex, and it has a picture of Krusty, like, in a passionate look on his face. Men come on stage and start dragging him off. It seems like police to some extent.
What? Hey, it's not really me. I used a stunt button.
We also see a sequence where Krusty's backstage and he's approached by some executives. Krusty, we're from the network. We have some bad news. I'm afraid your show's been canceled.
Ugh, I thought this would happen. I just hope you replace me with something as educational and as uplifting as I tried to be.
Actually, it's a hemorrhoid infomercial starring Claude Akins.
Can I play hemorrhoid sufferer number 1? Oh, that hurts. Ow! Oh, is there no relief?
I don't think so.
How about one of the after guys? Oh, that's better. I can ride a bike again.
They just walk off apologizing.
I can ride a bike again. Sorry for those people that have hemorrhoids.
We also see a flashback to the episode where we are privileged enough to have Ripken from the Derailers join us in conversation. It was Springfield, or How
Money
I
Sign.
Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalize Gambling. In this instance, it's from when Homer was a blackjack dealer.
20. Your move, Mr. Bond.
And we see Bond at a table with 3 villains who actually never appeared in movies at the same time together. It's noteworthy to point out. The villains are Oddjob, Blofeld, and Jaws. And again, they're never actually in movies together, but they're at this poker table. And Homer's not doing such a good job, because when he gives Bond his card, it's actually a joker, which of course is supposed to be removed. If that wasn't obvious, though, the next card he gets is the Hoyle rulebook to playing cards. And we see the villains grab Bond and drag him out of the casino, but he's screaming, But it was Homer's fault! I didn't lose! I never lose! Well, at least tell me the details of your plot for world domination.
Ho ho ho! I'm not going to fall for that one again. This means there will be 2 times, if you include the scene, that Homer has killed a James Bond character.
What was the other one?
It's going to be the Hank Scorpio episode.
I was thinking like you meant like already, but yeah, coming up next season, you're right. Interesting.
Very interesting, Homer.
And actually something I found interesting in the next scene is a deleted scene from Mother Simpson, excuse me. And it actually speaks to something that we discussed on that podcast about how we thought it was funny that Homer and his mother never talk about the fact that he works for Mr. Burns, who is his mother's enemy. In this scene, we see just that, as Homer is putting away a lot of 25-year-old candy just to make his mother happy, she thinks. But it won't make you unhappy, right? But yeah, as he's munching away, we actually see that he tells his mom that he works for the nuclear power plant.
Oh, Homer.
Well, you'll be happy to know I don't work very hard. Actually, I'm bringing the plant down from the inside. And he does this, like, almost like third base coach style, talking to the batter of, like, what's up next, with, like, signaling, touching his nose, his hat. It's supposed to be, like, CIA signaling.
Makes his mom proud.
We also go back to that wonderful time when Homer sold his soul for a donut. He found that hell isn't all it's cracked up to be in these never-before-broadcast scenes.
And this is the stuff that's the most confusing to me, because when I see all this stuff, I feel like it was in the episode, and this is always the one that confuses me the most on what I actually saw and didn't, just because we've seen the original episode and this one so many times.
This is the one I'm almost positive in this podcast when we reviewed that Treehouse of Horror, which I believe it was Treehouse of Horror 4, now that I'm looking at it, but that episode, we both were like, wait, where was the scene with the bowling? And it's actually, This is where you see it. Homer's head is rolled down the alley. When it hits the pins, it actually has his skull crack open, and a piece of paper falls out that says, I owe you one brain. God. Or signed God.
That's clever of God.
We get some flashback Phil Hartman. This time is Lionel Hutz, because, you know, if you didn't win your case, the pizza's free.
I'd sell my soul for a Formula One racing car.
Satan Ned keeps appearing. This is where Bart is toying with Satan Ned, and Marge actually has to stop Bart from pestering Satan.
Change my mind, sorry.
We see the trial where Lizzie Borden is telling the honor that we find Homer Simpson's soul is legally the property of Marge Simpson and not of the devil.
Oh.
The kids are happy. Everyone's happy. Lionel Hutz, this is where we get the pizza bit. So he's like, well, I didn't win. Here's your pizza.
But we did win.
That's okay. That box is empty. Again, another great bit when we get back to our actor live in studio, Troy McClure. He's dozed off on the couch with the film projector running behind him. You see an off-camera stick start to poke him in the ribs.
Huh. If that's what they cut out, what they leave in must be pure gold. Let's watch some more of these fabulous Simpsons outtakes.
We see a sequence from Homer and Apu where Apu had moved in with the Simpsons. This is very similar to another joke they did. I think I can see why they took this one out. They're watching a Bollywood movie that nobody gets, but Homer thinks it's hilarious because their clothes are different from my clothes. Look at what they're wearing.
Yeah, I can see why they cut that out. That scene you rented sucks, Miles.
Yeah. And finally, another scene we talked about in some detail back when we reviewed Homer's Heir, but if you recall, instead of releasing the hounds, Burns actually releases Robo Richard Simmons. And this joke was very divided in the Simpsons writers' room. Some people thought it was funny, some people thought it was dumb. They didn't really expect it to do that well, so it was ultimately cut from the episode, but then it was showed at some animation conventions and some colleges, and always got huge laughs, so it was put back into this episode, and it's become a very iconic scene. A lot of people really appreciate Robo Richard Simmons.
I love this scene. Like, I wish they would have kept it in the original one, and something I like about it is before the robot's even released, when it's a wide shot of Homer yelling up at Burns and Smithers and Bart, you can actually already see the outline of the door that Simmons is going to come out from.
Yeah.
So I was really appreciative of the fact that, like, they already had it built into the scene so that it was set up and it wasn't like this door just appeared out of nowhere. You could actually see it at the beginning of the scene in this moment.
When Burns is taunted to do his worst, he does just that. And as Simmons comes out, it's to the song. He's actually yelling at Homer, come on, big boy, shake that butter off those buns. Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your booty. Shake your booty. Robo Simmons chases or shakes his rump at Homer and Bart until it's actually declared that he's going to explode. Or I'm sorry, his ass is going to blow, and it does just that.
Luckily, Smithers got Burns and Bart inside before, anything bad happened.
Well, and it's pretty, graphic when the head, lands on the pavement and then explodes as well. Shake, shake, shake. We once again come back to Troy McClure. This past summer, all of America was trying to solve the mystery of who shot Mr. Burns. Then they found out it was the baby. It's like crickets and coughs. To keep this bombshell a secret, the producers animated several solutions that were never intended to air. We see a sequence that we talked about again when we discussed Who Shot Mr. Burns. We went into pretty good detail about a lot of this, but they actually, this being Merkin, made a lot of endings and actually went a long way through producing a ton of them because he was actually trying to get them leaked to the media to have more buzz about the episode was his goal. That didn't really work out for him, unfortunately, but since he had gone through all the effort, they're like, hey, we'll use it for this show. And they end up putting it into this. But most of all of this is just completely made up for the intent of keeping it a secret. So what Troy McClure is actually pretty much telling the truth here.
And I'm sure we talked about it in that podcast. That was so long ago at this point, I don't remember. But it's pretty typical on TV shows, especially in this day and age, to shoot multiple endings to series or to massive cliffhanger episodes.
Well, MCU, they did that in, I think they shot extra death scenes for the Avengers so that, people wouldn't be able to entirely tell who was going to die or not.
I think they've been doing that for the final season of Game of Thrones as well, where they filmed multiple things so that if any of it gets leaked or if anybody sees it, because they have massive trouble with people sneaking on set and taking pictures. That way no one knows what's actually true or not.
Sure, makes sense. In this case, we see quick shots of Barney, Tito Puente, Mo Apu, Santa's Little Helper, and Santa's Little Helper all shooting Mr. Burns. And then we actually get an entire fake ending, the alternate ending we are never supposed to see. It cuts back to the hospital room where Burns is identifying his killer.
The one who shot me was... Waylon Smithers!
No! Wait a minute. Yes.
With the sun blocker in place and the town aghast, I was on top of the world, so I wanted to kick up my heels and indulge my sweet tooth. I feel like celebrating.
We see the sequence where Mr. Burns discovers Maggie in the back seat with the candy. Waylon's not there to stop him from stealing candy from a baby, so he does just that.
With Smithers out of the picture, I was free to wallow in my own crapulence. Or so I thought. But at the last moment, Smithers, drunk as a lemur, lurched out of the darkness and fired.
Smithers is reflecting back on the night. That's right before I shot Jasper. Oh, I was busy that night.
Stricken, I lurched forth in search of aid, but finding only slack-jawed gawkers, I gave up and collapsed on the sundial.
And this is when Lisa points out that with his last ounce of strength, he was able to point to WS, referring to Waylon Smithers. And Marge is just relieved that Homer's safe and everything's recovered and we can all get back to normal.
Not exactly. Smithers, for attempting to kill me, I'm giving you a 5% pay cut.
Oh!
So that would have been a Simpsons reset, but we know there's tons of issues with that.
Well, and even Troy McClure here points out himself, but of course, for that ending to work, you would have to ignore all the Simpsons DNA evidence. And that would be downright nutty.
And the fact that Smithers saw that show at the time that Burns was killed that day and all sorts of other stuff.
Oh yeah, lots of stuff. But again, this was all made just for throwing off the scent of the ending of this mystery, which is funny that they went through that much trouble, but at least they had this episode to fall back on, frankly.
it pretty much gave them a whole entire episode.
And I think that's a lot to do with why this episode comes out so much better. There's more, of course, but the reason this episode as a clip show, it feels really fresh is because a lot of the clips that they're showing us, we legit haven't seen. They're lost clips, so to speak.
Well, and think about it this way, too, Miles. We're only 9 episodes removed from the culmination of Who Shot Mr. Burns. So this was still fresh on everybody's mind when this episode originally aired. And I remember them marketing it where you would see alternate ending to Who Shot Mr. Burns. So like
valid point.
So they did a really good job marketing wise on wanting you to watch this episode. And I mean, with all the 23% new footage, that's a quarter of an episode. It does feel very fresh, and this one will probably always be the best clip show on The Simpsons. So
arguably one of the best clip shows, period, of any show. I could see an argument for one of the South Park episodes, similar concept.
That's what I call a sticky situation.
And Community, I would have to give it hands down. But this is up there, for sure. Either way, we are very quickly coming to the end. And I will say that that's another thing that surprised me about this clip show is when it was time for it to be over, I was like, oh, wow, is it already over? Like, I was kind of a little bit like, oh, clips, but then at the end you're like, oh wow, I could have watched more of this. We cut to a camera showing a photo of the original Simpsons as they appeared on the Tracy Ullman Show to the Simpsons as we know them as of season 7, and Troy McClure reflects, yes, the Simpsons may have come a long way since an old drunk made humans out of his rabbit characters to pay off his gambling debts. Who knows what adventures they'll have between now and the time the show becomes unprofitable. Which is by far my favorite line of this episode, and I've purposely been not saying that just so I could wait for this. I'm Troy McClure, and I'll leave you with what we all came here to see. Hardcore nudity! And we get more shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your booty. Shake your booty. And as this song plays, we actually cut to many, many scenes of all the various times we've seen The Simpsons naked, such as Barney's diaper coming off, Nelson removing all, I think, 17 layers of Martin's swim trunks, Homer's impression of Mr. Burns, Bart as Dr. Cheeks, Willie's kilt, Homer's clown pants getting caught in the mini bike, the Don't Tread on Me in Australia, Homer's robe being lifted by the wind, Baby Bart swinging on a clothesline, Marge entering the bathroom to see Burns, Bart interrupting a nude Homer and Marge. And
don't come in.
Interesting one, Rich, because in this episode, it actually slipped through the censors, believe it or not, but that actually was more exposed in the sequence that we see during this clip show than the original airing, because this was actually the original way this drawing was meant to be seen, and the censors required that they added an extra layer, it being a blanket, when that episode actually aired. However, in the clip show, they played the version that did not have the extra layer, and frankly, you can see a lot of side boob for Marge. It's really brief, and I probably wouldn't have noticed it had there not been an IMDb note talking about its nature, but like if you go and watch it slowly, you're like, oh wow, this image definitely is a little bit more graphic than the other ones, just in the terms of the very conservative views we have on nudity in our country. Like, it's the only reason it shouldn't be risque at all, but I can see why the censors would have a problem with this one in the United States based on the way the current system is.
Don't turn on the lights, Bart.
We also see the Homer being caught on Eyewitness News when he was a babysitter, bottom snatcher, getting caught up in the media hype. We see Bart riding Snowball.
Yeah, that's the picture of him.
It's he's naked with that cowboy hat with the cat. That's what it is. Yeah.
A toddler.
Naked Homer running from the Krusty doll. Bart on the toilet. Homer dragging the stone of shame and or triumph. I wasn't quite sure. Rabbi's in the sauna. Bart doing his Nixon impression. Naked Homer in the forest. And finally, Homer throwing his cowboy hat into the camera's lens to close to our fade to black. And that brings us to the end of our 126th podcast extravaganza covering the 138th episode spectacular. Richie, Is there anything else that you or that book of yours want to talk about before we get out of here?
My guidebook, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, does point out a sign at the Springfield Civic Auditorium that the show opens up on, and it reads, "Tonight, Gala Spectacular," and "Tomorrow, Alternate Lifestyle Senior Prom." So I'd be interested to see that second part, especially with a lot of the senior citizens in Springfield.
I'd go to that.
And then just from a observation standpoint, we talked about the horrible animation from the earlier Tracy Ullman shorts and how much of a time crunch they're under. You can even see there's one where Homer and Marge are in bed, and it looks like Homer's wearing his work shirt like in bed. So you can understand like a lot of the pressures and how they couldn't redo certain things at the time. But it really kind of caught me off guard if that's what it was. But there were buttons and a collar on his shirt, so I assume I am correct on that. But you know what assuming does to Miles. Anyways, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I very much enjoy this clip show. It's one of those funny ones. I think people should always try to remember it for Simpsons trivia on like what is the episode number of the clip show extravaganza. So 138 is the answer. If you're doing a best darn diddly one, though, it's 126. And Miles, this gives me a brilliant idea. We should do a podcast clip show.
You do the editing on that one.
No, thank you.
I don't want to. So, also, people that really were not interested in doing all the editing that it would take to produce this episode, and writing for that matter, and anything else, is the writer and director of this very episode. Because if you have a sharp eye, you may have noticed in the opening credits, this episode is declared to be written by Pennywise and directed by Pound Foolish. This was in protest to having to work on the clip show at all. Now, part of that was because of the bad taste that they had in their mouth from having to work on the last clip show, which was another Simpsons clip show. Now, first of all, I'll just go ahead and say, they have since revealed themselves on the director's commentary. The Pennywise, the writer of this episode, is John Vitti, and the director is David Silverman. He went by Pound Foolish. They did not want to put their real names on this work. Part of that, again, goes back to another Simpsons clip show in which they were only given 3 weeks to put that episode together. 3 weeks is nothing in their usual production schedule. So by the fact that they were put on that task, it really turned them off because they didn't want to do it at all in the first place, let alone having to do it each year. And those two got stuck with it back-to-back years working together. So they were very, very upset about it. However, unlike another Simpsons clip show, they had adequate time to prepare for this one. And again, pointing out that they got such a great opportunity to work with Phil Hartman for such a large amount of the episode. It made it a lot more fun, and they did, in hindsight, enjoy this one a lot more. They were still bitter during the time of producing it, though.
I can understand that, but I mean, putting somebody under a time crunch when it's something that's supposed to relieve stress for the staff, that's counterproductive to the purpose of the episode. So,
well, I think the purpose of the episode in the producers, the executives' mind is just being cheaper than a regular episode. It has nothing to do with their workload.
Well, I thought the initial reason that the writers were doing clip shows was to add another episode to the season, but also not have to have the writers come up with an entire new episode as well.
Well, that was basically to meet the executives' demands that they wanted to fill a schedule. So, but yeah, ultimately it has to do to coming down with saving money, and it does save them time in some degree. But obviously, you have to still have the allotted time if you save it to have that be production or to have that be useful to you.
Right.
Regardless, that is going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This one was a lot of fun, a little bit of a different episode for us. Hope you had a good time reviewing the reviewed clips with us through this journey. Thank you on this review show. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We appreciate it. Each time you download, each time you tell a friend, each time you support us in any way, shape, or form. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You can, of course, follow our show online on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere at Best Darn Diddly. That's Diddly.
You can follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off. You can follow me at TheWiz_Kid23. Hit us up with your Simpsons questions. We love interacting with people wanting to know more about our Simpsons fandom, or just when you're trying to figure out what this episode came from. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we enjoy all of the jokes, the memes, the discussions, the questions, the theories, all of it. It's always a great time. Also, check out the Somebody's Podcast Network. There's a lot of great shows by a lot of great people on there. The Whiz Kid and I will be back again with you next week. And we'll be having another great guest, this time to discuss probably my favorite Christmas episode. Spoiler alert, I'm saying probably, so there's a small asterisk on that. However, we are going to be discussing Marge Be Not Proud.
Come back for what you always come back for. Hardcore nudity!
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Rising from the depths of a state called Michigan, two inebriated dorks prepare their plan for intergalactic domination. Mixing their extensive knowledge of geek culture with their insatiable thirst for alcohol, these two man-children bring you a show like you've never heard before. They will tell you tales from faraway lands and have you questioning their taste in beer. But make no mistake, friend, for the best coverage of your favorite comics, films, and TV shows, there's no better source for you to get your fix. So listen up, strap in, and prepare yourself as Jake and Tom conquer the world.